Now, the other thing that I find very interesting on this whole topic is the formation of communities. And that's very, very typical of me, or the kind of work I do. I do basically analytics and audit work. And for many years, there were maybe 3, 4, 5 people in the world interested in what I did. We really didn't have a community. But now, meaning it's easy. You know, we just meet across the world. And so then the idea of a community being people that get together in a physical location changed very much into a community of people with a common interest and with a medium of sharing that common interest. Meaning, I think like professional accounting MBA is a community. And this group that meets regularly in many different ways because you have many different classes. And then you have different interest groups, which are your different courses, but you probably also develop a social group. And you met some people that you did projects together, etc., forced you together. And you continue. I see this between my PhD students. They start 7 or 8 or 6 a year, and in a year, I'll see them pairing up. This works with that, that works with that, and it creates a kind of secondary community out of our PhD program. Very, very interesting. But the most interesting thing is communities tailored about what I call sparse interest groups. Some interest that not a lot of people have, but you can find a partner in different locations. Very interesting. I don't have a slide for this, but I find it a very interesting phenomenon, is the pairing and marrying kind of phenomenon. And if you look carefully, maybe 30 to 40% of marriages today, of physical or maybe kind of coupling without official marriage, come basically from communities on the internet. Basically, all these matching sites, but it's not only matching sites; it's also common interest sites. And you know, my wife is horrified about this. Meeting someone on the internet and marrying. How can you do something like that? How stupid is this? I actually think it's pretty smart. You know, you can very carefully stream a person with the characteristics that you want. Sure, there is a possibility that they are lying over their characteristics and etc. But I think it's a more rational way to meet someone than going to a bar and boozing up and meeting a girl or a guy, etc., etc. So I don't see that so bad. But it's very interesting that it became a major form of gathering a partner. And it has some interesting secondary implications. People that are insulated socially and physically can partner up. And many very interesting relationships come out of this. And so, meaning maybe I'm not old-fashioned on this. I think it's quite interesting, and I think it's going to affect you all on making relationship, not necessarily marriage and etc. But it's very different, and I think it's good. I don't know, get it. Okay, now let's talk for a second about adaptation. You know what I try to do on this is talk about, is kind of do a mix here of history and human evolution, and talking about how internet is affecting us. So adaptation, primitive hand tools change us from gatherers to hunters. You know, very interesting article, very interesting book about rise of inequality by a guy called Schiller, who is a professor at Stanford. And he basically says there that the gatherers didn't accumulate wealth. Why? Because they are always in the move, and it was very difficult to carry their wealth. The moment that we became agriculturalists, that we basically stayed in one place, the inequalities of wealth rapidly increased. Very, very interesting to understand what wealth is and wealth accumulation. And the invention of printing press propagated primitive hand tools changed from gatherers to hunters. The invention of the printing press propagated literacy while downgraded the importance of oral tradition. Notice changing of technology. What individuals and cultural transformation do, new computer technologies portend. So what is computer technologies doing to you? Researchers and technologists alike say they are already seeing technological world changes. Now we operate individuals as society. To be clear, they are not finding evidence of physical evolution and transformation. Those show up over thousands of years, not merely decades. I don't know about that. I think there'll be a physical evolution too, much more rapid than that. But there have been shifts in individual societal capabilities, habits, and values. We don't know how this is going to turn out. Now, language. Okay, let me ask you this. You think that in 40 years there'll be one language Chinese or one language English, or there is going to continue to be all these minority languages that exist today?
I think there's always going to be minority languages. I've worked in a lot of environments where people were bilingual and they had their own crowds. For example, in a restaurant, a lot of the chefs spoke Spanish. They could speak English, but whenever they didn't have to, they would speak Spanish to one another and whenever they got the opportunity. So that was just an example that I see, and I see it working like that across everything.
Interesting, Matt. I think you have a point there. What you guys think about language? I would like to get a little bit of speculation here.
I think it won't matter in the future. Everybody can have their own languages. Technology will probably be able to real-time translate into your own native language. So we can maintain our niche languages. As long as the syntaxes are roughly the same, it should be able to translate audibly for each individual.
I'm happy you brought in. I wanted to bring in the technology. So I don't know, Stanley. I actually ponder about that myself. Is the technology going to make people stay on the original languages, or will technology make people convert into some main language?
I think technology is a new language that everybody speaks, like even if you speak Spanish or English. What Matt was telling was truth. Like when we are in Spanish, I gather and I speak Spanish if I don't have to speak English, because I feel more comfortable in Spanish. Nothing to do with not liking English or English speaking persons or having secrets, but it's just that you feel more comfortable. But the language of the programming language and this computer language, and let's say Excel, we use a common language, like the things like the features we do and all of that. It's easier because we can communicate. And in like math is a language, Excel would be a language, this programming will be a language. It's easier if you know English because it's intuitive, but if you don't know English, you just memorize the commands and it works.
Okay, what will be the effect of something like an ear device that translates for you? So, Nelly hablando en español para nosotros, entonces I hear it in English. What will be the effect of that?
I could touch on that first. I think a big concern that would come to surface with that is the device recording what you're saying. And it could bring about privacy concerns, and some people may not want that on their person, whether it's the device picking up what's being spoken to them or vice versa. I just think that it's going to bring about a lot of concerns for privacy.
Okay, let's put that in one of the things to talk about. But what would be the effect on behavior, on knowledge of languages, the ability that I can get, I want a little ear device put in my ears, go into Italy and having great conversations with the Italians. Well, I could understand what they say, but I'll speak in English. Maybe I'll have my cell phone translating for them. What will be the effect of that?
Hi, Professor.
Yeah.
This is Jen. So that kind of quick interaction, I think, would definitely break down the barriers between people and allow them to communicate more freely and understand where the other person is coming from without having that language barrier. I mean, that's the upside for me. If I understand immediately what somebody is saying, then I'm a little more confident and I'm more interested in what the person is saying rather than how they're saying it.
Very interesting. I have this special meaning. We have a project in Brazil with Brazilian Rio de Janeiro's mayor's office. They have a lot of data. We love it. And Wenru, one of our PhD students, she's Chinese, works with them.
Who is here?
Oh, she's there. And she's learning some Portuguese. That would help Wenru a lot to have a little device that he speaks Portuguese, she speaks English, and he has the device and he understands. What would that do?
I think, like Emmett just put on the chat, it would lessen the incentive to learn the new language. It would allow us to become passive instead of active learners of a new language.
It definitely would have an effect on learning languages. I'm not sure. Maybe it goes the other direction. You hear it in one language, you hear it immediately in another language, you might be learning a language.
I think, on the other hand, I think if you don't, because I have two daughters, and my husband is American. He's from here, from Texas, and he doesn't speak any Spanish. And even though I talk to my daughters in Spanish, they default to English because we're always talking with each other in English. So they don't have that same incentive to speak it because they're not practicing it.
Until they are 4 years old, they can capture languages very, very easily.
I think this can relate back to what we talked about earlier with phone numbers. You don't need to memorize it because you just click mom or call dad or call sister. If someone's speaking to you, if you have the machine that translates from Spanish to English in your ear, you'll never have to learn it because you can always fall back on that, being like, okay, I'll be able to understand it, and they'll be able to understand me if I speak English and it morphs it into Spanish for them. I think there's no incentive there. It's like a phone number. I don't need to memorize the phone number because I know if I click on it, it'll work.
Yeah, meaning, and your brain adapts, meaning no effort to remember any phone numbers. Absolutely not. I did make an effort to remember names and remember locations and events. Telephone numbers, call Emmett, and my cell phone would answer it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting with what technology is doing. I don't think that technology is breaking down the borders of language in terms of translation. I think what happened is that as we had more technological capacity, the world actually became more interconnected. And so companies started expanding throughout different nations. And now, when I was working, I often worked with people in the Philippines, Brazil, and every time there was some language barrier, they always had someone that could communicate in English to me to help me understand. So it almost forced other countries to start learning English for these companies that were based in America and went to different nations, and it almost I think it's more of a convergence as to kind of where the home country of a company is and where you're working in companies. And it's going to be kind of in that language rather than the technology just converting, language.
I think it's good speculation. I just want to go to the last paragraph there. There is a new language being produced, the use of slang and jargon, both pre-existing and newly developed for today's instant communication tool, phonics, abbreviation, colloquial syntax, evolving from electronic discourse, meaning everyone would know what LOL means, okay, or XXX, or et cetera, et cetera. So, I have been professor for a while, and one thing I heard from my colleagues very often is that students, university students, don't know how to read, don't know how to write. And there are people that go to graduate school and still don't know how to read. Okay, I heard this over decades. You don't hear that anymore. You know why? Because everyone can read. And why can everyone read? Because they love their cell phones and they love the emails, and that's the main form of socialization. The main form of socialization is not anymore going to the corner of the street and with your buddies. And so most people will know how to read and write, to talk and to receive. But they do a different vernacular. There is a lot of abbreviations. The English is shoddy, and I don't see what's wrong with that. I think that languages change and they adapt to the technology. And the languages also adapt the way you express them. And basically people learn. LOL is too long to say lot of laugh. So you abbreviated it. It becomes part of the vernacular. So I'm not a purist on that. I think this is very interesting, however, to see the jargon